As everyone knows, this summer in India has been authentically brutal. So hot that Indian organs are literally on fire. Tap water scalds your mouth, and even the southern media cannot stand it anymore. But some clickbait accounts claiming India hit 60 degrees Celsius are really reaching. Do not confuse ground surface temperature with air temperature. Historically, this year is not even that extreme. Uttar Pradesh, New Delhi, and Rajasthan are hovering around 44 to 46 degrees. Actually a degree or two cooler than previous years. If anything is different, the heat wave arrived a bit earlier and nighttime temps run a bit higher than usual. That is it, just 4 to 5 degrees above normal. Indians used to cool off at 3 a.m., but this year they are still roasting in the sauna at that hour. Now that is truly demoralizing. With smartphones spreading across India, more Indians are making noise online, amplifying the outrage. Typically, the Indian brutal heat wraps up by late June. There has been a localized cool down recently. New Delhi nights dropped to 28 or 29 degrees Celsius. As a country where nobody can afford AC, nobody can run AC, and ACs literally blow people up. The Indian dysfunction has nothing to do with the weather. They suck either way. Hello everyone, I am a newcomer streamer Tuanzu, and today we are examining the absurd AC antics during the India heat wave. India has 1.42 billion people, but only 94 million air conditioners. A pathetic 8% penetration rate. Chinese is nearly 100%. America sits at 90%. Even the Philippines has 12%. How does India AC rate justify a great nation full of color and flavor? But scarcity is just the start. The top 10% of Indians own 72% of all ACs. The rest of India is lucky to have a fan. The vast majority of ordinary Indians can only survive the heat through rapid evolution, because astronomical AC prices in India mean not only the poor cannot afford them, even most of the middle class is priced out. Take the most common 1.5 horsepower split inverter AC for bedrooms. What is the market price back in China? With government subsidies, it is 1,300 to 1,600 RMB, top-tier brands with guaranteed efficiency. But in India, the same class runs 80,000 to 90,000 rupees. That is 7,000 to 8,000 RMB. And even after discounts, still 3,000 to 4,000. Premium brands hit 5,000 to 6,000, 2 to 3 times the Chinese price. And this is just the bare unit. While installation in China is basically free, Mumbai will rip you off for 700 to 800 RMB in labor and materials alone. So a fully installed AC costs an Indian 5,000 to 8,000 RMB. Surely Indians earn a lot. Then sadly, that is just a fantasy peddled by India cheerleaders. In the real world, ordinary Indian workers earn 700 to 1,000 RMB monthly. White-collar workers make 1,000 to 1,400 RMB. At these income levels, staring at a 5,000 to 6,000 RMB AC price tag is heartbreaking. All you can do is evolve. Only middle-class Indians earning over 1,500 RMB a month after scrimping for 3 or 4 years might have a shot at buying one. But even this so-called Indian-style middle class is under 10% of India population, cannot afford it, so ownership stays low. So why are Indian ACs so expensive? Because despite claiming 7.7% GDP growth, India cannot independently manufacture a single decent air conditioner. Core components are 100% imported, inverter compressors 90% imported. Even primitive fixed-speed compressors are half imported. Whatever low-end compressors they do make cost a third more than Chinese, are a third less efficient, and fail at double the rate. So the only AC parts India can actually make well are plastic casings, basic sheet metal, and simple wiring harnesses. Top AC brands have under 15% domestic content, basically just screwing parts together. Everything is imported, so prices cannot come down. To be fair, the Indian government is not entirely unwilling to fix this. In recent years, the Modi government has hyped, making India obsessively over white goods, like ACS, genuinely wanting to boost domestic production. The intention is not exactly wrong, but unlike normal humans, our Bharat has its own cosmic worldview. The way to boost localization is not hard work. It is through scams. On May 8, 2026, the Indian government pulled a big move in the middle of a heat wave. They slashed Chinese compressor import quotas to 30% of previous levels. That means if India bought 1 million compressors from China in 2025, this year they can only buy 300,000. And this quota is a nested trap, dripping with Indian-style hubris. The scheme started in March 2025. when the Indian Ministry of Industry launched Cold Chain Revolution 2030, promising $10 billion over 5 years to build domestic compressor manufacturing. But a month into this glorious revolution, on the 26th of April 2025, the Indian government announced it would open imports, waiving standard certification for Chinese-made AC compressors under 2 cooling tons for direct import for 1 year. Everyone figured localization is the long-term goal. It is getting hot. Importing makes sense, no problem, right? But the moment that 1-year exemption expired, the Indian government immediately slashed import quotas for compressors under 2 cooling tons by 70%. And compressors under 2 cooling tons are exactly what household ACs and refrigerators need most, and what India is least capable of producing domestically. Clearly, the Indian playbook was to dangle subsidies as bait, then open quotas for a year to lure Chinese companies into believing the Indian market is huge. Take more orders, stock more materials. Once Chinese firms have orders booked through 2028, India suddenly slashes quotas and blocks finished units. How do you fulfill those orders now? You have no choice but to come to India, claim subsidies, build factories, and help my Bharat realize Cold Chain Revolution 2030. If that is not petty cleverness, I do not know what is. And this so-called domestic compressor subsidy, it is basically a telecom scam. There is no dedicated funding at all. It is buried inside the Indian Ply subsidy program, whose total budget is a measly 62.38 billion rupees. And by October 2025, only 8% had actually been dispersed. It is a classic lure the pigs into slaughter scheme. This year, compressor imports have plummeted. AC supply has crashed, prices have soared, and ordinary Indians can afford them even less. So they just have to roast. Besides, in India, affording an AC is nothing. Running it all day makes you a true baller. ACs are an appliance where running costs always exceed purchase costs. Indian power transmission loss rate hits 18 to 45%. And people think electricity is Shiva gift. If you stole it fair and square, why pay for it? All those losses get passed straight on to honest Indian users who actually have meters and pay their bills. During peak summer hours, running your AC around the clock means a New Delhi household monthly electricity bill jumps by 170 to 340 RMB extra, which is a full 1/3 of monthly income. So only established Indian middle-class earners above 3,000 RMB monthly dare run their AC without guilt. For Indian entry-level middle class, even if they bought an AC, they would not dare run it more than 10 hours a day. And when you turn it on, you have to tiptoe around the AC, or it might just blow up on you. Yes, Indian ACs can literally explode. Right now, Indian brands, Voltas and Blue Star, plus some Japanese and Korean brands, dominate 70% of the mid to high-end AC market. These ACs are reliable, but priced way too high for entry-level middle class, so 18-22% of the market falls to informal channels. These informal channel ACs cost 15,000 to 25,000 rupees, half or even a third of the price, a real bargain. But quality assurance depends entirely on Shiva. Legit ACs use thickened copper tubes. They use substandard ones. Legit ACs use high-pressure capacitors. They use cheap garbage ones. The entire shell and core components are scavenged from scrapped ACs. And the deadliest trick of all is secretly swapping out the refrigerant with constant blackouts and power cuts. Once the room fills with saturated gas, a short circuit, capacitor failure, or even just the arc from a compressor restarting can detonate a homemade thermobaric bomb. If the refrigerant line gets damaged and leaks, flammable gas builds up indoors and in the outdoor unit compartment. And India, grid voltage fluctuates constantly with frequent blackouts. Once the gas in the room reaches saturation, a short circuit, capacitor failure, or even just the arc from the compressor restarting can ignite a homemade thermobaric bomb. Blown out doors and cracked walls are the minor issues. No one survives. Indian media reports dozens of these every year, with one incident killing 9 people at once. Just the other day, another AC electrical fire in Delhi killed a full 21 people. And that is just the ones too big to hush up. Unreported cases are surely worse, more destructive than India-owned artillery shells. India got lucky this year. The weather has not been the worst. 1 more month and they can muddle through. But according to the latest WMO report, however, if we actually look at the data and trends, the so-called India takes off narrative is a cherry-picked fallacy. Sure, India GDP has grown fast these decades, but the Indian share of global GDP has not grown nearly as fast. Just 1.13% in 1991 to 3.69% in 2024, a measly threefold increase. The global GDP share went from 1.61 to 18%, a tenfold increase. So Indian cheerleaders have the nerve to use that to contrast with China tenfold growth. But how do India cheerleaders have the nerve to use that to contrast with Chinese tenfold growth? Cherry picking works wonders. In fact, after 12 years of Modi make in India, India still cannot manufacture its own air conditioners. Manufacturing GDP share fell from 17% in 2014 to 12.6% in 2024. That 25% target, long forgotten. Worse, India did not just miss its best window of opportunity. It is about to face a brutal new reality. The development path of India is about to be locked in by AI and unmanned technology. The pro-India argument rests on demographics, a massive, relatively young population for cheap labor. The classic takeoff path is raise farm productivity, build labor-intensive factories, pursue exports, replace farm wages with factory wages, let purchasing power expand the domestic market, then labor-intensive exports can retain profits locally, build capital accumulation, and fund industrial upgrading. That is the textbook first pot of gold. This is how populous economies got rich through labor-intensive industry in the 1980s to 2000s. But can India still replicate that? Doubtful. Unmanned technology is approaching industrial maturity. Repetitive production jobs will be replaced by robots within 8 to 10 years. India's labor advantage is already shrinking, no matter how they spin it. How can hundreds of millions of young Indian workers compete with tens of thousands of lights-out factories? If automated lines replace factories meant to absorb farmers, surplus rural labor gets trapped in low-efficiency agriculture forever. No wages means no domestic demand. Capital cannot circulate locally. The accumulation needed for industrial upgrading becomes impossible. Meanwhile, India has a massive workforce, is mostly illiterate or semi-literate. Once machines take over, they have zero chance of transitioning. They cannot do robot maintenance, equipment servicing, smart manufacturing, or industrial software. None of it. By then, the only thing these angry young people can do is stare through their cheap smartphones, watching day after day as the Brahmins and city dwellers of Mumbai and New Delhi steal their futures. And people still call this a demographic advantage. Still betting on India. That is just telling people to hug a bomb. India has two dangerous economic consequences now. First, the World Bank 2024 report. Manufacturing employment has not just stagnated, it has actually declined, an extremely rare case of premature deindustrialization. Second, labor share of GDP suffered its steepest decline in 4 decades. Capital smells danger fast. FY 2025 net, FDI plunged 96.5%. From $10 billion down to just $353 million. 5 straight months of net outflows from August through February, until a Taiwanese screwdriver company and a Japanese automaker. March had $112 million in net inflows. But then Israel and its vassal, the US, launched war against Iran. Oil prices surged. AC shortages worsened. India exposed. Launched war against Iran. Oil prices surged. Heatwave exposed the emptiness of India. By April, FDI inflows were back to mere tens of millions. Yet, in stark contrast to the crisis in India, conglomerate profits keep rising year after year, while their domestic fixed asset investment keeps falling, from 40% in 2015 down to 33% in 2024. Take Reliance, the biggest private firm in India by market cap. All their equipment is imported too, sitting on trillions in cash flow. They prefer asset-light schemes, funneling profits through family trusts straight into Western capital markets. Zero investment in household appliances, precision machinery, compressors, genuine necessities. They leave it entirely to the Indian government to fleece suckers and slaughter pigs. Then there is the Adani Group, the largest private power generator in India, biggest coal importer, largest private port operator, controlling 45% of Indian port operations, plus government-granted coal import and power distribution rights. Yet they are obsessed with middleman arbitrage. As for the Indian 18% plus power grid losses, boilers and turbines forever relying on imported equipment, do not expect Adani to lift a finger. Costs are dumped on residents. Cannot run AC. Just pour more Ganges water on yourself. You will even get that divine aroma. And Tata Group, they bought Jaguar Land Rover ages ago. Anyone heard of them building a self-sufficient automotive parts industry in India? Yeah, me neither. Recently, they have been assembling iPhones for Apple screens, chips, batteries, precision components, all imported from China, Japan, and Korea. All they can make is casings and wiring harnesses. Meanwhile, their family office dumps massive funds into US stocks and mutual funds. Overseas asset allocation doubled in just 6 years. These numbers say it all. Even as profits rise, Indian conglomerates refuse to invest in India. Why? The root cause is the institutional gap between China and India. We all know the BJP has won election after election since 2014. Some credit Modi personal charisma. Honestly, who the hell sees charisma in that old fraud? The BJP financial collusion with big capital. Not a peep. Where exactly this so-called godlike Modi charm comes from? Nobody can tell, but the BJP cozy cash pipeline from India's biggest conglomerates. Complete radio silence on that. According to Indian media, total political donations from 2024 to 2025 hit 38.11 billion rupees. The BJP alone grabbed 31.12 billion, over 83% of the total. Nearly all major conglomerate donations went one way to the BJP. 99% of big-ticket political donations flowed exclusively to the BJP. After raking in that kind of cash, losing an election would be truly embarrassing. That is how the Modi regime affords all those flashy Hindu mega rallies, grand campaign spectacles, voting handouts, and stormtrooper squads. Once in power, their only mission is serving big capital. Do not be naive. When private conglomerates consolidate, they are not here to play Leifeng. They exist to extract profit. Indian conglomerate groups, traced back to pro-British feudal lords from the colonial era, is their cheapest path to profit. Once they have installed a Modi regime that entirely serves big bourgeoisie interests, they are even less willing to spend a dime supporting domestic manufacturing if it cuts into their bottom line. Indian manufacturing can only wither away through Modi performances and hollowness, sliding into a colorful, fragrant premature deindustrialization. In fact, Indian and Chinese modernization share striking similarities. Both have massive populations. Neither could colonize or wage war to accumulate capital. And both must pursue peaceful development. So, both need to concentrate limited resources to drive modernization and catch up. The key difference: a real socialist state concentrates resources through public ownership, while the Indian capitalism relies on the bourgeoisie consolidating into conglomerates to do the same. But when resources land in the hands of late developing conglomerates, their comprador instincts kick in. They would rather bind with Western capital and chase division of labor arbitrage than do the hard work of building supply chains. This leaves domestic industry chronically crippled, local production costs bloated, and finished goods absurdly expensive. Manufacturing can never take root, and not even labor-intensive industries can get off the ground. So manufacturing stays underdeveloped, unable to absorb employment. They cannot even establish basic labor-intensive industries. GDP grows every year on paper, but it is mostly spinning in place IT, finance, and resource monopolies. Wealth concentrates upward. Ordinary purchasing power shrinks, which further contracts the Indian market. Conglomerates see no domestic returns, so they shift assets overseas, shrinking the market even further, which weakens manufacturing yet more. So Indian economic growth can never benefit most of its people. Back in the 1950s, China and India had nearly identical fundamentals. India even had a slight edge, but 75 years later, Chinese GDP is 5 times that of India, and ordinary people living standards vastly exceed those of Indians. As Modi himself admits, massive numbers of Indians will slide back into, or deeper into, poverty, because India is almost out of time. That is all for today. Do not forget to subscribe.